Hello, Tessa.
Hi, Tom.
Why don't you tell people where we're coming from?
We're currently in the car, so if you hear traffic noise, that's what it is. And we are driving home from a session we did with a horse that would qualify as an at risk horse under the circumstances. And do you want to share a bit about the situation, Tom?
Sure. Well, I think you'd be better telling about the situation. I feel like this podcast episode should be called "Tire Sounds on Highways" instead of "Hoofbeats on Main Street."
Yes, there is
Uh,
quite a bit of road noise.
but we'll see if this all works out. Um, but if it wasn't for our our vet friend, this horse wouldn't even be alive today. So it was nice to save a life,
It was.
and it was a lovely mare.
She was. And the backstory is she was, our vet was called to actually put this horse to sleep because the horse um, had some behaviors that were fear-based that made it, the owner think that it was unsafe to handle for another person, and the behaviors were getting in the way of them being able to safely transport the horse across country, which is where they were going. And she had contacted a few rescues to try and place the horse, and the rescues were full, and she didn't know what to do. So her solution was to end the horse's life. I think she thought for the safety of everybody involved, and
Yeah, she was trying to be
just
compassionate
to
about.
avoid putting the horse in a bad situation should she end up in the wrong hands.
Yeah, and that is our expertise, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, our vet got out there to do the euthanasia and
Assess the
assess the
situation a little bit.
situation. Yeah, and thought that we might make some really good progress with this horse, and that was preferable to ending the horse's life under the circumstances. So put us in contact with the owner, and we were able to go out and have a very productive session with the mare, and actually a lovely mare. We can definitely see why
The concern.
the owner was concerned about her falling into the wrong hands, and also about transporting her, just the way that she walked out of the stall the first time we took her out of the stall today.
Yeah,
I could see at that time why somebody would not be eager to be in a confined space with her.
Oh,
She
for
was
sure.
pretty reactive, but
sure.
the mare ended up being just really lovely.
yeah. In the end, it was quite a transformation. This mare, she's what breed is she?
A Friesian-cross.
Okay, and an adult, mature horse. I don't know how old.
Yeah, we're not sure. We'd say, I don't know. We'll call her 12.
Yeah.
She's probably over 10 and under 20.
So she was clearly sensitive, because how did she react with our presence?
Well, I was standing off a ways just to not put any undue pressure on her, but with you, she was a snorty mess. And it was a 12 by 12 stall, and she was as far away from you as she could get, and pretty anxious about it.
Yeah, so she definitely, in terms of the first episode we did of the podcast was about connection and noticing, valuing, and understanding. She clearly noticed me, so she had high sensitivity and noticed my energy there. And I would say she was in a search state, not in a passive state. That's what I would say she was at.
Yeah, I would say she was with a very thin buffer between search and panic, I would say.
Yeah.
It would not have taken much for you to push her into panic
I agree.
in that confined area.
And that's why it's so important that we be able to read the horse and assess it accurately.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't about bossing the horse around. It was about seeing if we could help this horse find a safer way to cope with their environment. And here I am, new to them, and she was not sure who I was or what I was about. And so she was, I would say, looking how she could get away to gain comfort. But that was the state of mind she was in. Her body would start to freeze. Did you notice that?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So what do you make of that?
Well,
You got to kind of look at the whole big picture. What, her feet weren't moving, but it seemed like her mind was moving a lot.
yes, and it's interesting because, you know, we had a little bit of backstory on the horse, but nobody could be certain about what her history was. So she had training in the past, and we suspect that some of that training was rather unkind. But we don't know what kind of training it was. We didn't even really know her level of training. So at first, when a horse like that freezes their feet, it's hard to know if they're doing that because there was some amount of desensitization that was done and they think that's what they're supposed to do is freeze their feet, or if their feet are frozen because they are just not sure what they're supposed to do, so their answer is to just stay still. I think you realized more quickly than I realized that with this particular mare, it was not desensitization. It was more that she was just uncertain.
Lack of understanding.
Lack of understanding.
Yes.
Yeah, and uncertainty.
Yep.
And we have another horse that did that also, and it took us a little while with him to realize that that's what it was, Oreo.
Yes.
When we first started him, we thought he was just being resistant, and what it was is he was uncertain. The moment he understood, he had some clarity on what he thought we wanted him to do, he was actually very willing and very forward.
Yes.
So sometimes they're just uncertain. Other times, though, we have worked with other horses where it was human caused and it was deliberate, and those horses are actually the most challenging when they've been desensitized to that point. But this mare, very fortunately, that was not the case. Her stickiness or freezing was really just out of uncertainty.
Yeah. So I got in her space. She was snorty, so I was making sure that I didn't add more energy to get her. She was already searching for comfort, but she wasn't searching in a high degree or a high amount of energy with her feet, but you could see her mind was searching. And there was a little bit, she was in the back corner. She didn't look like she was getting ready to jump or anything. So I'm pretty good at reading that, I think, because you and I have experienced horses that have
Nala.
jumped. Nala
and Hope was another, came to me with the news that she was an Olympic jumper.
Yeah. Nala is the only one I've ever experienced doing that, and that was at the very beginning. And I didn't sense that with this horse. I sensed that she wanted away, and if she had the freedom to go away, she would have, but I wasn't going to put extra energy or pressure on her because she was simply searching for comfort. And so I maneuvered myself in low energy in a way that helped her stay in that search state and give her areas that she could go to if she was too uncomfortable that would not be unsafe. And it turns out she started looking to me. And actually, maybe I will introduce the save button on this topic now. The save button is just reinforcing a behavior. And every time she did something I thought was an improvement or desirable, I pressed the save button. I reinforced that behavior. So anytime she was snorty and looking away, I wasn't pressing the save button there, but when she looked to me, I pressed the save button. The way I did that was by taking any of the energy she was feeling uncomfortable about, just my presence even, I would step back so that she had more distance between us and felt that relief. And I said, "Good girl," every time, and I used a soothing voice to do that. So can you describe why those things are saving the behavior that she was displaying in that moment? Like, what is that?
Yeah, that's what the mechanism at play is negative reinforcement, which we've decided to call subtractive reinforcement because negative has a negative connotation.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is just to give her some reprieve, give her a release from the energy that was in her space
Mm-hmm.
when she does the thing that we want her to do, which was to look to you.
Yeah.
And by doing that immediately upon her exhibiting the behavior that we want more of, which is her looking to you, if you immediately step back out of her space, you're marking that moment, that behavior by rewarding her, by removing the energy that she felt was slightly uncomfortable.
Exactly.
And she picked up on that instantly. I mean, she was a highly sensitive mare, but she noticed that immediately and quite quickly started to look to you. You could also see her lick and chew when she started to understand what behavior she could exhibit to achieve that removal of pressure effectively. When she started to understand that, she started to relax a bit. And I feel like part of that is that they start to realize that they have some agency over the situation.
I agree.
That they have, and that's where value comes in, that they start to feel at that point valued.
Yeah.
Because of the acknowledgement of their discomfort.
Right.
And that actually has a positive effect on the rest of the relationship and the rest of the training session, because they realize that you value them, you notice them, you value them, you understand them, and they're seen, they're heard, and the relationship is reciprocal. You're not there to force them to do anything. You're there to have a conversation with them, that they are a conversation partner, and what they have to say matters.
Yeah, I feel like having reinforced moments where she noticed me and chose to look at me, that was building on the value that we talked about in the last episode. That was building on, all I want from you is to be noticed and to be valued. I'm not asking anything else. I'm not going to ask you to go and do things. Right now, if you can just notice I'm here and start looking to me, I promise that I will provide comfort. And she quickly changed from being uncomfortable with me in her presence to accepting it. I wouldn't say she craved it by any means at that point, but she accepted it enough that she wasn't snorting anymore.
Yeah.
And then I moved to touching her. And so I was able to scratch her on her shoulder, rub her on her shoulder, and she accepted that. And then I went to do that on her other side, and she was more skeptical, more bracy. And then once she started accepting that and showing that she could be a little more predictable, I was making sure I was predictable in that. Then I started to have more of a conversation where I started asking her to do some things, but it did not require her to move her feet. Because we were, what size did you say, 12 by 12?
Oh yeah, it was tight quarters.
It was tight quarters, and she's not a small horse. So I didn't want her moving her feet. Well, let's fast forward. We got the rope on, the lead rope on, to lead her out of the pen. And what did she do when I let her out of the pen?
Oh, she bolted out of the pen. It was a kind of tight quarters, a normal size walk-through gate, but into a fairly narrow aisle and then out through the center of the Mare Motel, and she was clearly uncomfortable in a confined space. So she kind of froze and then bolted through the gate and out and banged into the fence and
It's kind of an explosion.
reacted by running sideways for a good 30-40 feet once you cleared the Mare Motel. Fortunately, it was in a fenced area.
Yeah.
But she definitely reacted, and that was the moment where I definitely empathized with the owner's concern about putting her in a trailer.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
she did not respond well to being in a confined space at that moment.
So from being passive to energy on her head to a little bit of searching, and then when I went to lead, she was in a search state there, getting to the gate to get out of her pen. But then she went from that to a panic, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I thought she was going to pull the rope out of my hand.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to fight that. I tried to stay with her, and fortunately I was able to stay with her. It wouldn't have been a big deal if I had let go. But then I started leading her, and she led well.
Mm-hmm.
So that clearly that's she had knowledge. And then I would stop and face her, and she showed a bit of an emotion on that. Can you describe what you saw with that?
When you faced her?
Yeah, I was leading her, and then I stopped and I'd face her.
Well, the first time you were leading her and you stopped before you even faced her.
Oh yeah.
She spooked.
Yeah.
So she slammed on the brakes and jumped backwards, like
just
she
from me
thought
stopping
that you were going to spin around and go after her. That's
Yeah.
how she reacted.
Yeah.
And she did that a few times actually. I think we have it on video where just you stopping, she would kind of spook and go backwards and sideways.
Yeah.
And then when you faced her, it was the similar response.
Yep.
That she was very bracy, and if she didn't run backwards, she had her feet frozen and she rocked backwards. Very alert, nostrils flared. And the owner had expressed that when she first rescued her, that she would leave. I think was
Yeah.
what she said when he would face her.
Uh-huh.
She really did not like that. She was very uncomfortable with that. So
Not surprising.
yeah.
Well, as the session progressed, we were probably halfway done with the session by that point. And why don't we fast forward to what you saw at the end? I did some of those same things. I would lead her, I would stop, I'd face her, I'd ask her to back up.
Mm-hmm.
And even I didn't know we were going to go to the trailer. I wasn't sure how this thing would progress, but I wanted to see, well, if we get to the point we can lead her up to the trailer, maybe we can kind of see how she feels about that. What did you see in all of that in the end?
I saw, well, surprisingly, actually, I would not have thought that she would have been as comfortable at the trailer as she was, even just right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
But she was. I saw a relatively trusting, well-behaved horse walk up to a trailer with a ramp and quite willingly walk up the ramp because you were asking her to, and then very politely back off the ramp and then walk back up the ramp again and back off the ramp.
And by that time I'd gotten her softening her head downwards and being responsive to that, where she really seemed to understand that at that point.
She did it.
She had zero understanding in the beginning.
Yeah, but she had a nice backup by the time you were.
She was softening that backup. The first time, remember, I said, let's watch this backup. And I asked her, I put pressure on that halter backwards to ask her a low energy backup and what was the quality of her body and shape and balance and all that.
At first?
Yeah.
Not good. She would hollow out, head up, and she went backwards. So she had an understanding of what you were asking, but the quality wasn't great. She was kind of
bracy.
Stiff and bracy and dragging her feet and
hollowed out back,
raised head.
Yep. And by the end, her back up. It wasn't just backing the feet. She was softening in that, rounding the back some.
Yep.
And so, and the lowering the head, wow. I think at one point I was kneeling on the ground and I was able to ask her and soften her head all the way down to me.
Yeah.
And she stood balanced and confident.
Mm-hmm.
Like she trusted me completely on that. Well, that was useful when we got into the trailer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's not about just getting the feet on the trailer. It's about how does she feel in there? If something starts to happen, where's her tendency going to be? Is she going to... That's where you'll see a lot of times the head goes up and they bang their head on the way out because they're afraid.
Uh-huh.
And people will put pressure on the halter maybe to try to not let them back out or whatever. Well, I wanted her to be inclined to soften that head downwards if she felt pressure on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say we got her to that point pretty successfully.
Yeah. She was very good at the trailer. And when you walked her up the ramp and into the trailer, she walked right in and she stood. She was actually pretty comfortable in there. She didn't seem to have any anxiety related to the trailer.
Not at all.
Granted, we didn't try and close her in,
Nope.
but she didn't move sideways, she didn't fidget, she didn't do any of the typical I'm uncomfortable in here things, and just backed out like a champ when you asked her to.
And she was connected in that the whole time because I was able to interrupt it on the way in. We stopped on the threshold, softened her head. I don't remember if we interrupted on the way back, but on the backup, but she was softening in the backup. There was no need to check anything. She was softening and staying nice and rhythmic with her feet. I would have not expected that based on how the introduction was.
Me either. When I saw her come out of that stall the way that she did,
Yep.
I falsely assumed that we were going to have trailer problems just because she was so uncomfortable in that threshold. But she didn't. She I think because she was so connected with you by the time you had worked with her for 30-40 minutes prior to taking her to the trailer,
Yep.
that anxiety that she had originally coming out of the stall wasn't there anymore.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head there. That's, I think, the reason for that success and the quality in the end was because the majority of that session was spent on connection. And a good part of that, it was all initiated in that small stall. And, you know, that's a valuable investment there.
Mm-hmm.
And can you imagine if I had, when we got there, I just grabbed the lead rope, taken her out right away, and started trying to lunge and do all the other things that require her to move her feet, which is a very common thing to do, especially if you know you're going to have a trailer problem. People will say, "Well, you gotta really move their feet and make outside the trailer undesirable and inside the trailer desirable, because it's all about the trailer."
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine if that's the approach?
What
kind of outcome that would have been with that
this
horse?
It would have been a disaster.
I agree.
Yep.
So, I believe, I think the take-home message here, the success of that session, which didn't fix things, but it sure put her on a path in a nice direction, that can be built upon. It's all about connection.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember how I started that sentence there, but
I think you said kind of the win of this.
Yeah.
Of the session.
The take-home
It was just
message
one
is,
session
yeah,
with this horse.
concentrate on connection first. And because she was so sensitive, like you had mentioned in our first podcast episode, like those are the ones that are easy to get noticed by. Like they'll notice you,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll notice the little changes, and you actually don't have to work as hard in that department.
Mm-hmm.
Like just having them become aware of you and changes is easy if the horse is sensitive, so that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's just a lot. There was a lot that happened, and I think that's a big win. We don't know the future of this horse. If potentially this horse might make its way to the foundation.
Yeah, we're not sure.
We don't know.
The owner hasn't.
We don't know the future yet, but
Yeah,
maybe we'll be talking about her on another episode. Who knows?
we might be. We'll have to see what the owner decides.
This was supposed to be about passive search and panic.
We did touch on that.
We touched on it. And the idea is to be compassionate about their state of mind. What state of mind are they in? I think we'll have to touch on this topic again.
Oh, absolutely.
In more detail, but
yeah.
This is about this Friesian. Should we say her name?
Her name is Bella.
Bella. This was about Bella. So it was fun meeting Bella today, and it's a good feeling knowing that kind of horse has a future.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
It's all because of the team effort, and it was a team effort from the vet to you and your foundation and us going up there. You set that all up, and you communicated with the owner, and the owner being willing to have us come up and assess the situation. And I believe she even said her eyes were opened on some things after watching that session.
Yeah, she was lovely, and had an open mind and was very accepting of us or you, what we had to say.
Yes.
And clearly took good care of her horses and seemed to have the best interest of the horse at heart. So
yeah, that was great.
Yeah, it was good.
Well, another great day.
Another great day.
Another good conversation.
Another good one for the books.
Yes. All right. Till next time.
Till next time.
Thanks for listening to Hoofbeats on Main Street podcast. If you would like to submit questions or short videos for review, our email is hoofbeatsonmainstreet@gmail.com. This podcast is a product of Care for Horses Foundation. You can find Care for Horses Foundation on Facebook and at careforhorsesfoundation.org.